There is a kind of strength that never needs to announce itself, a power that doesn't come from raising your voice, arguing, or trying to prove your worth. It comes from silence, from self-control, and from the ability to simply walk away when you know you're not being respected. Most men don't realize this, but one of the most powerful moves you can ever make in life, especially when dealing with women, is the decision to walk away without explanation. The act itself may seem small, but the message behind it shakes the foundation of how others perceive you. When you choose silence instead of reaction, you instantly separate yourself from the majority of men who respond with anger, desperate words, or pleas for attention. By refusing to play that game, you give her something she can't ignore, the space to sit alone with her actions, and the emptiness your absence leaves behind. Think about it for a moment. When someone disrespects you, the natural impulse is to defend yourself, to fight back, to explain why they're wrong for treating you that way. But in truth, that reaction only feeds their ego. It shows that you care too much about their opinion, that their words and behavior have power over your emotional state. In that moment, you hand them control. But the man who chooses silence, the man who calmly stands up, looks once, and simply walks away without a word, is a man who communicates in a language far louder than shouting could ever achieve. That silence says, "I don't need this. I don't need you. My peace, my energy, my respect for myself comes before any argument or disrespect you can throw my way." And what happens when you make this move? At first, she might roll her eyes, she might act like she doesn't care, she might even laugh it off. But what you need to understand is that people, especially women, replay moments in their minds over and over. When you don't give her closure, when you don't give her the last word, when you don't engage in the emotional back, and, fourth she expects, she is left with silence that grows louder over time. Questions creep into her mind. Why didn't he fight back? Why didn't he explain himself? Did he really just leave? Is he really that unbothered by me? That is when regret starts to sink in. Because while words fade, actions echo, and the quiet action of leaving without explaining yourself is unforgettable. Now, let me make this clear. Walking away is not about manipulation. It's not about playing games or trying to make someone chase you. It's about self-respect. It's about realizing that if someone shows you they don't value you in that moment, the strongest response is to stop giving them your presence. You don't need to prove that you deserve better. You simply live it. You embody it by not standing where you are not honored. That choice alone commands respect, whether she admits it or not. This silent move is powerful because it triggers contrast. People only appreciate light after they've experienced darkness, only value water when they're thirsty, only miss presence when it's gone. When you walk away, you remove the light of your energy, the attention she once took for granted. She may not feel it immediately, but eventually she will. And when she does, regret will be tied directly to the memory of disrespecting you. She'll remember that instead of yelling, instead of chasing, instead of lowering yourself to her level, you chose silence and self-control. That image will stay burned in her mind longer than any words you could have ever said. Another reason this move is so effective is because it shows emotional mastery. In relationships and interactions, the person who controls their emotions controls the situation. By walking away calmly, you're sending the message that you are not easily shaken, not easily manipulated, and not easily controlled. That is an attractive quality, one that women deeply respect, even if they don't admit it openly. And when a woman realizes she couldn't get the reaction she wanted out of you, she often feels a sense of loss, as if she underestimated your strength. That regret becomes her teacher, but walking away isn't just about her. It's about you. Every time you choose silence instead of drama, you protect your peace. You teach yourself that your energy is too valuable to be wasted on disrespect. You create room for your growth, your success, and your happiness. And in that process, you naturally become more attractive, not just to women, but to everyone around you. People start to notice that you carry yourself differently, that you don't get dragged into unnecessary battles, that you respect yourself enough to keep moving forward. That presence alone commands more respect than any words ever could. Of course, this doesn't mean walking away is always easy. Sometimes the ego wants revenge. Sometimes your heart wants to explain. Sometimes you feel the urge to make her see your side, to force her to understand the value she's losing. But that's where true discipline comes in. By resisting those urges, by choosing silence over explanation, you show yourself that your value is not dependent on someone else's recognition. You know who you are, and you don't need anyone else to validate it. That is the kind of strength that can't be faked, and it's the kind of strength that leaves a lasting impression. There will be times when people misinterpret your silence as weakness, when they think you're avoiding conflict because you're scared. But let me tell you this, silence backed by self-respect is never weakness, it is strategy, it is maturity. It is power, because when the noise dies down and the drama fades, she will remember that you didn't need to explain yourself. You didn't need to fight for her respect, you demanded it by removing yourself. That's when the regret sets in. That's when she realizes she underestimated you, and that's when your silence becomes the loudest voice in the room. So the next time you feel disrespected, remember this. You don't have to raise your voice, you don't have to argue, and you don't have to prove anything. Simply walk away, let your absence do the talking, let the silence echo louder than words, because the man who walks away without explanation is the man who leaves the deepest impression. There is a truth about respect that many men overlook. It isn't earned through arguments, persuasion, or proving yourself in the heat of a moment. Respect is drawn from how you carry yourself, how you live your life, and the quiet but undeniable results of your actions. When a woman disrespects you, the greatest response is not to retaliate or explain. It's to elevate yourself so high that her words, her doubts, and her behavior become irrelevant. That is the essence of leveling up quietly. You don't announce your growth, you don't broadcast every step, and you don't look for applause. Instead, you commit to building yourself brick by brick, until the very life you're living becomes the loudest statement of all. Think about it this way. People can argue with your words, but they cannot argue with your results. If you tell a woman she'll regret treating you poorly, she might laugh in your face. But if you walk away and pour your energy into becoming sharper, stronger, more successful, more disciplined, and more focused, she will see with her own eyes what she lost. No lecture could ever compete with that. The silent move of leveling up is about shifting your focus from her to you, from disrespect to self-respect, from being reactive to being proactive. You stop investing energy in trying to make her understand your value, and you start building a life so full of value that she can't ignore it. What does leveling up quietly look like? It starts with self-mastery. Instead of letting disrespect break you down, you let it fuel you. You hit the gym not because you want her to notice, but because you demand the best version of yourself. You push harder in your career not because you want her to regret her choices, but because your purpose is bigger than her opinion. You discipline your habits, upgrade your lifestyle, and refine your mindset, not for revenge, but because you've realized the best victory is to outgrow the situation completely. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it creates results that speak on your behalf. Your silence becomes a language, and your growth becomes the punctuation. At first, she might not even notice. She may think you've disappeared, that you're just another guy who faded away. But time has a way of revealing truth. When months pass and you reappear, or when she hears about your progress through others, she can't help but measure it against the version of you she once dismissed. That comparison creates a sting. That sting is regret, and it doesn't come because you told her she'd regret it. It comes because you proved it through your transformation. The power in leveling up quietly also lies in mystery. Most people are desperate to show off their progress. They post every little achievement. They talk about every new move. They broadcast their goals before they even achieve them. But a man who grows in silence, who doesn't announce every step, creates curiosity. She starts to wonder, what is he up to? Why is he so quiet? Why can't I read him anymore? That uncertainty breeds intrigue, and when she finally sees the results, they hit even harder because she never saw them coming. There's also something deeply attractive about a man who doesn't need validation. By keeping your growth private until it speaks for itself, you show that you're not leveling up for attention. You're doing it for you. That authenticity is magnetic, and when she realizes that your success doesn't revolve around her, when she sees that you've moved forward without looking back, she feels the weight of her mistake. Because what she thought was replaceable suddenly looks rare. What she thought was ordinary now shines extraordinary. And regret is the natural response to realizing you misjudged someone's value. But here's what's even more powerful. Leveling up quietly doesn't just make her regret disrespecting you. It makes you forget to even care about her regret. As you grow, as you achieve, as you build, you start to realize that her opinion doesn't matter anymore. What once hurt you becomes irrelevant because you've outgrown the version of yourself who needed her validation. That's the ultimate win, not just making her regret, but reaching the point where her regret doesn't even register in your world. That is true freedom. Now, understand this clearly. Quiet growth is not about pretending. It's not about buying things you can't afford to appear successful or living for the approval of others. True leveling up comes from discipline, consistency, and authenticity. It's about improving your health, your mindset, your skills, your finances, and your environment. It's about creating a life that reflects the respect you demand, because when you respect yourself enough to invest in your growth, people naturally adjust how they treat you. Some will admire you, some will envy you, and some, like the woman who disrespected you, will regret underestimating you. The reason this move is so silent yet so powerful is because it doesn't rely on her reaction. Whether she notices or not, whether she regrets it or not, you win. You win because you've taken pain and turned it into fuel. You win because you've shifted your energy from proving to improving. You win because every day you wake up stronger, sharper, and more in control of your life. That kind of growth builds confidence that no one can take away from you. And here's the irony. The less you care about showing her your growth, the more impactful it becomes when she finally sees it. When you no longer need her to notice, when you're not chasing her regret, when you're simply living your life at a higher level, that's when the full weight of her loss hits. She realizes you've become the kind of man she thought didn't exist, and that she let that go. That's a pain deeper than any words you could have thrown at her in the moment. So never underestimate the silent move of leveling up. Walk away from disrespect and pour that same energy into becoming more. Not with noise, not with announcements, not with anger, but with quiet consistency. Day after day, you sharpen yourself until your life becomes the answer to every doubt, every insult, every test. Let your growth speak louder than your defense, and let your silence carry the message that words never could. Because when you level up quietly, you don't just make her regret disrespecting you. You make yourself proud for refusing to settle. And that pride, that confidence, that strength will always be louder than anything she could ever say. There is something powerful about a man who doesn't feel the need to argue for his boundaries. Most men, when disrespected, try to explain themselves endlessly. They debate, they justify, they try to convince the woman why she was wrong, hoping that through enough words she will finally understand and change her behavior. But the truth is, boundaries are not something you explain into existence, they are something you enforce through action. When you quietly draw a line and refuse to cross it, you show her that your standards are not up for discussion. That is a silent move that leaves a lasting impact. Boundaries are really about self-respect. They communicate what you will and will not accept, not with words, but with consistent behavior. When you tell a woman, "I won't tolerate disrespect," but you stay after she disrespects you, your words mean nothing. She sees that your actions don't align with what you claim, and from that moment forward, she knows she can push the line further. But when you calmly remove yourself the moment your boundary is violated, you don't need to say a single word. She feels the consequence in real time. Your silence and your absence teach the lesson better than any lecture could. A man who sets boundaries without arguing communicates something rare: certainty. He isn't trying to persuade her to treat him better, he isn't begging for respect, and he isn't competing for dominance. He simply knows what he deserves and refuses to compromise. That kind of quiet strength creates a contrast she cannot ignore. Most men collapse under pressure, hoping to maintain peace at the cost of their dignity. But when you stay true to your line, even if it means walking away, you show her that respect is the entry price to your presence. And that realization creates regret, because it forces her to measure the difference between you and every other man who tolerated what she dished out. The beauty of enforcing boundaries silently is that it shifts the power dynamic completely. Instead of her being in control, testing and pushing to see how far she can go, you take back control by refusing to play the game. You don't get dragged into emotional arguments or attempts to explain yourself. You don't give her the satisfaction of seeing you bend. You let your actions speak for you, and actions, unlike words, cannot be twisted. When she sees that you will walk away rather than compromise your standards, it imprints a memory she won't forget. Over time, this quiet enforcement builds a reputation. People learn how to treat you not by what you tell them, but by what you allow. If you allow disrespect, it will continue. If you quietly cut it off, it dies immediately. And once a woman realizes that your boundaries are real, that your silence is stronger than any argument, she will either adjust her behavior to respect you or lose the privilege of being around you. Either way, you win. So never feel the need to argue about what you deserve. Boundaries don't require debate, they require consistency. When you enforce them silently and firmly, you create a respect that words could never buy. And in the quiet that follows, regret begins to grow, because she knows she pushed away a man who lived by his standards. One of the greatest tests you'll ever face is how you respond when someone tries to provoke you. A woman might throw insults, push your buttons, or say things designed to make you react. In those moments, most men fall into the trap of defending themselves, raising their voice, or showing visible frustration. But the truth is, every time you react emotionally to disrespect, you hand over your power. You confirm that she can control how you feel, that her words have the ability to shake your composure. The silent move, the one that makes her regret disrespecting you the most, is withholding your emotional reaction. When you remain calm and unbothered in the face of disrespect, you create an effect she never expects. Instead of fueling her fire, you starve it. Instead of feeding the drama, you cut it off at the root. She looks for a rise, for proof that she has gotten under your skin, but when you stay collected, she's left unsettled. That silence, that lack of reaction, becomes louder than any argument could ever be. It sends a message: you are not in control of me, I am in control of myself. Withholding emotional reactions isn't about being passive, it's about being powerful. It shows that you value peace over chaos, discipline over impulse, and self-respect over temporary satisfaction. When you don't flinch, when you don't let anger or frustration consume you, you radiate strength, and strength always commands attention. It makes her reflect on her own behavior because suddenly she realizes she can't shake you. She can't play with your emotions like she expected. That realization often turns into regret because it highlights her inability to break your character. Another truth is that emotions fade, but impressions last. If you explode in anger, that image stays with her forever. If you stay calm, that image also stays, but in a way that builds respect, even if she doesn't admit it immediately. Over time, she will replay the moment in her head and realize you didn't give her the satisfaction of breaking you. You didn't let her win the emotional battle, and in that reflection, regret quietly grows. The strongest man in the room is not the loudest, but the one who stays composed when tested. By mastering your reactions, you show a level of emotional control that most people never reach. And when a woman sees that she can't control your mood, she realizes she can't control you at all. That's when the weight of disrespect hits her hardest. So remember, not every insult deserves an answer, and not every test deserves a reaction. Your silence, your calm, and your ability to remain unmoved will always speak louder than your words, and that control is what makes her regret ever trying to disrespect you. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can ever make is not through presence, but through absence. A woman might think she can say or do whatever she pleases without consequence, but when you decide to step back and remove yourself completely, that silence becomes a mirror she can't avoid. Letting your absence create curiosity is one of the quietest yet most impactful moves a man can make. It doesn't involve confrontation, it doesn't involve shouting, and it doesn't involve proving yourself. It's about choosing distance and allowing the weight of your absence to speak on your behalf. The reality is that people only truly appreciate something when it's gone. As long as you're available, answering every call, responding to every message, and constantly present in her world, she can easily take you for granted. She may not even notice the energy you bring into her life because she has grown used to it. But the moment you step back, the moment you stop showing up, there is a silence she didn't prepare for. That silence begins to echo. It forces her to realize just how much of her daily life was filled by your presence. At first, she might act like she doesn't care. She might even pretend that your absence doesn't bother her. But over time, the curiosity grows, questions begin to surface in her mind. Where is he? Why hasn't he called? Why hasn't he texted? What is he doing without me? That uncertainty becomes more powerful than any words you could have spoken. Because while she thought she had you figured out, your absence makes her realize she doesn't. And when people don't know what you're doing, they imagine, and often their imagination hurts them more than the truth ever could. What makes this move so effective is that it puts the focus back on her, not you. Instead of chasing, instead of begging, instead of trying to explain your worth, you let her face the reality of life without you. She begins to see the gap you've left, and that gap reminds her of the respect she should have shown when you were present. Your absence creates the stage for regret to appear, because only then does she measure what she lost. The beauty of letting absence speak is that it requires no performance. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to fight for recognition. You simply step back and live your life. That space you create gives her room to feel the consequences of her own actions. And often, that space makes her realize too late that she pushed away someone who carried value, someone who carried strength, someone who carried a presence that can't be easily replaced. So never underestimate the power of stepping back, Sometimes the loudest message is delivered by silence. And when she sits alone in that silence, filled with curiosity and regret, she will finally understand the weight of losing your presence.